this episode of, I don't know what we're calling this
The
thing.
Whimsical World of Michael Renau.
I don't know if we decided on that or not, but we are going to be covering tortoises. There's, for some reason, not too much interest in tortoises, which is a huge shame because there's a lot of really awesome species like this Aldabra right here, a lot of which are critically endangered and need help. So we'll be going over some husbandry for tortoises, the basics, covering a few different species, and taking a look at some setups. So, let's go! Alright, so here is my setup for our more humid-loving species. It's basically a tortoise pen that I built covered in a greenhouse tarp. So it retains heat and moisture very well. We're in California, so it's not the most humid state, so it makes keeping some of these more tropical species a little bit more problematic. But so right here we have our black Burmese mountain tortoise. These are all of our smaller tortoises that we're raising up. So as you can see, it's very damp, very wet in here. The thermometer is broken, but 69% humidity. Various hiding places, make them feel secure. You have a heat source, also UVB right here. Also heat for nighttime. And of course a water dish. And to make things easier, there's also a misting system installed. So this goes off a few times a day just to keep the humidity up, and then also I'll sometimes go around and mist the areas that are mist. So down here we have some other species. Let's see if I can get in here. Oh, there's one. Got a few radiated tortoises in here. In my opinion, one of the most beautiful shell patterns. Very, very nice. This is a very nice specimen here. So again, a lot of hides. Moving on down here, we have our winter enclosure for the Aldabra. Normally he's in a pen up on the hillside, but it's winter time right now, very, very cold. So he hangs out here. He's not very active. He'll usually just come out, scavenge a little bit on his food, sometimes bask a little bit. So they're not very active when it's cold. He's got a little hide box over there you can fit into, hang out in. So this works for now, but you want to make sure that you get a larger size pen for larger animals. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about a few different species. Right here we have Burmese black mountain tortoise, and here we have an elongated tortoise. He's a little bit shy. Both are younger animals. Elongateds are pretty inexpensive, common animals. The Burmese blacks, they're actually endangered in the wild, and they're a little bit rarer. There's another variant, the Burmese brown, which don't get as large. The blacks are actually considered the 4th largest species in the world. So their care is actually very similar. Tropical animals. The babies are very, very fragile. Most tortoise species, the babies are fragile. You want to make sure that you give them adequate hydration. You should soak them at least a few times a week. It also helps them poop. Warm water is very great for getting tortoises to poop. Almost has the Spangler eye eyes. The belly's almost like what the heck is that stuff called? A Damascus steel almost. Badass. Alright, we'll put these guys back, stop harassing them. Alright, so here we have an example of an outdoor enclosure for tortoises. This is where we keep our Mediterranean species. Like right here is one of our younger marginated tortoises. And it worked out pretty well. This planter was already here when we moved in, so pretty perfect for smaller tortoise species. You can see put down some seed for some nice grass in here, some various weeds and such. So they have several water dishes throughout the planter. They can't escape. Yeah, there's the marginated right there. There's an Argus. Don't worry about him. Don't mind him. We got our breeding pair of Russian tortoises. It's pretty cold today, so they're a little bit inactive. And there's a lot of nice cover foliage. It makes them feel secure. Also, they have right here a heated box, which is a must. Unless you live in somewhere more tropical, Florida has better weather. Right here, it's a heated box. I have it controlled by a remote control. The controller, it basically turns on once the temperature drops below a certain point. There's a few of them in there. And they'll usually go in there at nighttime. Some animals you can train to actually go in their box when it's time to go to bed. Other ones you just have to put away. Also, there's a door on a latch. I can close them in at night so nothing gets in, nothing gets out. So that's a very basic outdoor tortoise pen for smaller tortoises. Alright. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some health issues that you could possibly see in tortoises. One of the major ones is a lack of calcium, which would result in pyramiding and also a squishy shell. Usually hatchlings up until a few months old, maybe even a year old, might have a squishy shell. That's normal. Anything past that though, a squishy shell is a lack of calcium. That's why babies especially, you want to make sure that you do provide a good D3 supplement for them. Pyramiding may also result from a lack of calcium and a lack of humidity. It doesn't really, it's more of a deformity. It doesn't seem to really, oh, he just dropped a log.
Well fed.
Oh yeah, very well fed. Anyway, pyramiding in severe forms actually can be debilitating, but usually doesn't harm the tortoise. Also, occasionally they can get eye issues. If that happens, you want to make sure you have a good reptile vet nearby. Dehydration, especially in hatchlings and babies, is a really common issue. That's why you want to make sure to soak baby tortoises at least a few times a week. Otherwise, usually past the year mark, tortoises are usually pretty hardy animals. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the closing of this episode. So, closing remarks, tortoises are amazing animals, very underrated. It's a big commitment. You know, there are some smaller species like Russian tortoises here that don't get very large, very manageable, but most tortoise species do live very long, anywhere from 60 to over 100 years, so it's a very big commitment. Needless to say, there's also space requirements for that for certain ones. It's always better to keep them outdoors if you have the means to do so. Otherwise, a large, spacious indoor enclosure in the garage somewhere, depending on which species. You just have to make sure that you provide good UV lighting. Obviously outdoors that's not a problem, but indoors you need good high-powered lighting for them. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, comment, whatever, and rock on. Oh,